Amazing. Welcome. This is Mercè Graell. I'm the chair of the Master of Design, and this is a pleasure to to have this first cohort graduating for this Master of Design in Integrative Design. Actually, 9 brave students that they embraced uncertainty from the very beginning. They were the first cohort, and now. As true strategic designers, they are going to give us a glimpse into the highlights of their thesis in 10 minutes presentations, each thesis, and at the end you can keep on the conversation with them. They have posters showing the whole extent of their thesis, so welcome to continue the conversation at the end of these presentations. So welcome, and we start with the first.
Hi, our thesis is The Rise of the Octopus in Innovation Culture. I am Sheila Davelbus.
And I'm Joe Owens.
We partnered with Kedge and Ether. Kedge runs the Future School. It's a 3-day immersive training in future studies targeting executives and educators. Ether runs Shift Camp, a 4-day immersive in design thinking that accelerates talent and the capabilities of college students and young professionals. Our challenge was to figure out a combined offering for these two companies that answers how might we create professional training that successfully combines design thinking with strategic foresight. As an overview, this is a quick quantitative visualization of the huge amount of research that we did. Unfortunately, we can't share with you all of the details in 10 minutes, but we would be happy to tell you how we found patterns, cross-checked data, and informed our insights after all of the presentations conclude. We will share some of the more provocative data and research to help set the stage of our insights and solution. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are currently about 7.6 million job openings. At least 2.5 million of these jobs remain open due to a gap in human skills. Others are staying open because companies have become so fearful of turnover that they want to hire the perfect individual from the start. Except there's no such thing as perfect. Compounding this issue is that young workers no longer get the on-the-job training that they need to be able to move up the ladder. So we need alternative education options.
Why do we need alternative education options, Sheila?
Well, in the U.S. alone, there are more than 44 million people who collectively owe $1 trillion in student debt. Yes, you heard that right, $1.5 trillion. It's a problem. So much of a problem that major companies like IBM and Google have dropped their educational requirements. College will always be an option, but people are now demanding new forms of education to complement that, outside of formal learning. They want bite-sized pieces and parts that can be learned when it's convenient for them.
Adding to the struggle in the United States, we have noted some other unhealthy trends as well. First, we have workism. Our work has become our identity and our master as society believes the more you work, the more you're worth. Research has proven that people are identifying themselves in their purpose more and more by the work that they do. For the past century in America, hard work and effort has guaranteed upward mobility. However, that is no longer the case in modern society.
Another thing is a trend in hiring that has progressed from the I-shaped person, which is the true specialist, to the T-shape, a person with core capabilities but can tap other areas, to the pie-shaped person. This is where polyskilling begins. Polyskilling is the expectation that workers need to possess loosely related adjacent skills. By aggregating job descriptions, we know that there is a current demand for pie-shaped people. But at its unhealthiest, it's the demand for the unicorn. Sure, this trend might not sound so bad at first, unless we consider stagnated wages, which means people are expected to do much more for much less.
Crippling uncertainty is driving the future of the industry and is a significant factor for the previous trends that we've mentioned. Proven business models are beginning to fail and is leaving employers unsure about what skills that they need from their employees. It is also proven that if someone is removed from the position, it becomes incredibly hard for them to get back into the workforce. This encourages employees to continuously apply, even if they've been recently hired. This has led many to realize that they need to update how they think rather than the tools that they use.
We also discovered that the market is saturated with opportunities for the young professional and for the CEO, leaving a large chunk of workers in the middle forgotten. That's people with about 5 to 15 years of work experience. In addition, this group is observed to have the least amount of executive-level human skills needed to climb the ladder. And there are 3 cultural expectations that are getting in the way of developing these human skills actually in the workplace. 1, companies do not allow us time to actually be human. 2, culture does not accept that risks are part of our work. And 3, sometimes being wrong leads to being unemployed. Our solution, we wanted to consider these gaps. So, what if the future of innovation culture relied on teaching these human skills in a new way?
In order to move forward, especially for innovation teams, it is becoming crucially important that we focus on the skills that make us human. Technology is already growing rapidly with an eye towards enhancing what humans do naturally. We, much like the octopus, have to focus on how we can adapt and leverage our intrinsic skills in an uncertain future.
Previously, we showed you part of this formula in relation to polyskilling. Now you see it has evolved.
Sheila, why is there an octopus at the end of our formula now?
Well, at first, we went really dark into the polyskilling trend, which painted a scary future. We are great Black Mirror writer episode, yes. After more coffee and further evaluation, we realized that an octopus isn't wielding 8 technical skills. It's actually 9 human skills needed across industries for innovation. If your company involves humans, you're going to need to start hiring octopuses.
So now that we're finally talking about what exactly makes an octopus person, we have identified 8 human-centered skills that are powered by a central pillar of radical self-awareness. As adults, we have forgotten some of these skills, and worse, some of us may have been discouraged from learning them entirely at all. So, to be an explorer, for example, is to bravely go where no one else has gone before. Some of you may have heard that quote before. And this trait is deeply buried in the human psyche and drives us to push the envelope of what we know. Integrity is a universally sought-after trait in our leadership. If we know someone has integrity, then we can trust that their decisions come from a good place. Intuition is frequently crippled by our superiors. Intuition means that you have arrived at a solution based on your wealth of experiences, which can seem illogical or invalid. Mental elasticity is the ability to be responsive in an ever-changing world. It is part adaptability and part improvisation, and it enables us to expand our core strengths beyond what we felt was possible before. Grit is passion and perseverance. It is the courage to keep going in the face of difficult situations and to see your tasks through to the end, through hell or high water. Persuasion allows us to vocalize our passions and beliefs and to change the hearts and minds of others. We must be able to persuade to be the advocates for both ourselves and for others in the future. Imagination drives the future. For example, cell phones, robots, and artificial intelligence were all inspired from works of science fiction. And so is a deep tragedy that having an imagination is discouraged after childhood. And critique has a bad rap because it is often done poorly. However, it is an incredible experience when someone sees the potential of your ideas and shows you how they can be achieved. And finally, we come to our pillar, radical self-awareness. It is hard to apply yourself meaningfully unless you truly know yourself. This requires a deep reflective study of your life experiences and who influences you. And so our new framework has been developed to help people reach their full potential. People just like Martina, who is a project manager. She constantly juggles tasks and schedules, and since she has moved up the corporate ladder, she lacks the powers of persuasion, intuition, and elasticity that will become necessary for a continued climb into the executive level. Next, we have Scott. He was a senior engineer leading small teams at his former company before he left to become his own boss. However, his company is faltering since he isn't used to pushing his boundaries or receiving critique. And lastly, we have Rachel. She got her 2-year degree in microelectronics and is beginning to work immediately. She has not had enough time to develop her elasticity or her persuasion skills.
Human skills are the underlying elements of a person. They also help an innovation culture succeed. We discovered that to learn the most difficult human skills, you need an immersive, hands-on atmosphere. To help Martina, Scott, and Rachel become octopuses, we focused on an offering that strengthens their ability to lead through ambiguity, while focusing on building their human skills, or octopus skills. During the workshop, our aspiring octopuses are grouped together and challenged over a 3-day immersive experience. These teams are selected in a way that helps each other reinforce those human skills. We also created and tested some tools for our offering. The first tool helps simplify the process of making and projecting patterns 5, 10, and 20 years into the future. This activity helps teach sense-making and ignites the imagination. The next tool tackles self-awareness, one of the most difficult things to teach busy adults, because it's a skill that requires constant vigilance and a little bit of humility. We created a time journaling exercise to help participants evaluate what just happened, how they feel, and why. Our research and testing showed that this activity helps you get to know yourself in a more profound way and spark self-awareness. So let's check in on our team. Joe, what did Martina, Scott, and Rachel learn in our training?
Well, just so much, because Martina, Scott, and Rachel have completed their training, and they're well on their way to becoming full octopuses. Martina, when matched with Rachel and Scott, learned a great deal about how to let her intuition guide her towards innovative solutions. She learned how to be persuasive while talking about her ideas to our team and the cohort at large. Scott thought he was an expert on everything, and during the immersive he realized how little he actually knew. Rachel helped him realize how much tech has changed over the last few years, and Martina provided insights on managing projects. These interactions helped push Scott to accept critique and open his mind to new boundaries to explore. And Rachel got to experience what it was like to show her value to a team and flex her persuasive muscles. Working with Martina and Scott pushed her beyond the envelope of what she thought she could do, which enhanced her ability to be elastic.
So we'll ask you, are you ready to become an octopus? Thank you.
And next up, we're going to have Priya and Wee have an amazing presentation.
Hi, my name is Riyajita Umari.
And my name is Priya Mehta. But before we even begin with our presentation, we would like to ask you all a question. Could we, for a few seconds, imagine having an overactive bladder and not having the ability to predict what comes to your mind and what would your challenges be? Anybody?
Leaking all over the place.
Yes? And?
Anxiety.
And?
Being wet all the time.
Embarrassment.
Exactly. And now, imagine having to wear these products to prevent yourself from the embarrassment at the age of 30 or 50. You don't want to do that. Yes, that's precisely why we chose this project. Our project is about reimagining the incontinence product and service experience. We partnered with the leading healthcare service organization, Cardinal Health, to understand and look for insights to inform the future incontinence experience. Now, there are different types of incontinence, and this condition affects every individual differently. Some of the known causes are childbirth, neurological disorder, surgery, stroke, dementia, and cancer. Through our research, we discovered that the cause, the user type, and the products don't align to the user needs. Because no matter what the level of incontinence a person has, the user seeks for maximum protection, which often leads the user to make poor product decisions. We also understand that this is an unwelcomed physical change, and when a person needs help, it is sought in form of whispering. The current healthcare system does not make it better for some of our elderly population because they are using the products by chance and not by choice. Here are some stats. In United States, there are 25 million people who deal with incontinence every day, and the market is estimated to be at $28.65 billion by 2025. The stats are huge, and yet it's a less talked about issue. Because it's a taboo topic, it borders not only on health issues, but on issues of dignity and confidence. Because people with incontinence have several challenges and issues, and it is sad that most of these issues are unheard. As design researchers, we advocate the need for human-centered design and wanted to truly understand the unmet needs of the user. To connect with the users and understand their daily life challenges, we traveled across Columbus to the users' home and their workplaces to conduct contextual interviews, while also looking at the complicated healthcare system and the multiple stakeholders that influence the product decision-making. And now, we shall share some of the challenges of the actual users we met during our research.
Miss Tracy Jessie. She's an elderly dependent woman who in her late 70s. She says, I feel confident when I put on my pull-up by myself. She wishes she would not have to be dependent on a caregiver to provide these basic activities for her. Bobby Bart, she's a caregiver who in her late 50s. She says, I'm always very careful while changing my aunt because I fear she might fall, and I have to walk her to the bathroom every 2 hours to prevent her from being wet. She wishes to provide her aunt care only when it's needed. Adam and Clint, he's an independent user who in his late 60s. He was incontinent for a short period of time. He says incontinence was extremely emotional for him. While he explaining this, he said, one of the first things you learn while growing up is to control your pee. And when you become incontinent, you start to lose that sense of control. He wishes he wouldn't have to wear this product ever. Also, shopping for them was embarrassing for him. Our last user, Sassy Cassie. She's an independent user who in her mid-30s. She's a multitasker and always on the go. She was incontinent for a short period of time. After her surgery, she said, I had to sit through a meeting knowing that I needed to change, but I couldn't because it was simply time-consuming. She wishes for more normalcy in her day-to-day life activities. So if we look closely at all the diverse group of people and their needs, we observe some common themes, which led to our area of opportunities, which 3 areas focus on product and the other 3 focus on services. Our first area of opportunity is ease of change, means introducing better closure to have hassle-free and less time-consuming change process. Sense of control means providing user the control they lost to anticipate and manage the incontinence. Building confidence and dignity. Initiative to avoid stigma and bringing back normalcy in the user daily life activities. Increase engagement, allowing user to share their feedback with Cardinal Health for continuous improvement. Introducing customization, customizing product offering to be more catered to the user's different unmet needs. And the last one, product accessibility, means creating a better buying experience for the user. And now Priya will explain how we decided our area of focus.
These are different areas of opportunity, and each area solves a particular problem for the end user and Cardinal Health, creating a better user experience. After multiple ideas and several discussions, we decided to focus on sense of control. Also, while choosing this, we were shooting for the root cause of the issue. What does sense of control mean? The sense of control means having the ability to be aware and act on time to the brain signals sent to you, because when you really have to go, you have to go. At a macro level, it sounds ambitious, and it truly resonated with us when Adam and Clint said, one of the first things you learn while growing up is to control your pee. And when you become incontinent, you start to lose that sense of control. When he said that, it was like putting a microscopic lens over a really big, complicated problem. Now, sense of control looks and feels different for different users. For example, for stressy Jessie, it would mean leading a more dignified life, and most importantly, making those little decisions for herself. It would reduce the anxiety of wanting the extra care from her caregiver. For bubbly Barb, it would mean spending quality time with her aunt, without having to walk her to the restroom every 2 hours. For Adam and Clint, it would bring more confidence and lead to a smoother recovery period after his surgery. For Sassy Cassie, it would mean having a good social life without any hesitation and being free and confident and not changing her lifestyle because of being incontinent. Also, by focusing on control, it indirectly addresses the various other opportunity spaces. Currently, the incontinence industry is providing people control, but only from a marketing language perspective, not necessarily giving them the control they need. Organizations are still offering diapers and pads for control, and we believe there's more to offer. Our solution focuses on bridging the gap between cardinal health and the end user by bringing back normalcy, giving the users their dignity, and creating more acceptance towards the situation. It's moving from a very functional product orientation mindset to a more human-centered design mindset. We are now making our final recommendations for our concept that is looking at technology to provide people the control they need. And we have identified materials that shall anticipate the use of restrooms and product change when it's required for the different users. And here's a glimpse of what the future of incontinence might look like. Thank you for listening. And lastly, stay tuned to know more. Coming up next is Elise and Marshall. Woohoo!
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I am Elise Applewhite,
And I'm Marshall Stokes.
and we would like to address the educational and emotional challenges facing at-risk youth of Columbus. We have partnered with the Columbus Recreation and Parks to design a potential solution to make a change concerning this chronic issue. There is a place where poverty screams louder than opportunity, and the educational provisions of the community aren't enough to help the developing minds of the kids that live here. This is a place that is a stark contrast to a thriving community that seems to be a world away, but in terms of resources and support, but in reality, they're a walkable distance from one another. I'm talking about East Columbus, a forgotten community which sits 2 blocks away from Bexley. 95% of families living within this neighborhood are at the poverty level or they're working poor. Abandoned homes surround the elementary school, and the only sources for food are crime-ridden corner stores, and bars and drive-through liquor stores are prevalent, while the only sources of hopeful inspiration are faded murals of faceless kids. This is a matter of literally being on the wrong side of the tracks. One of the symptoms of systemic poverty is low-performing schools. 30% of kids are truant in Columbus. So it's not rocket science to conclude that these schools are low-performing, because we expect the young minds of this community to focus and engage in class, and they don't know where their next meal is coming from. But there is a glimmer of hope that comes in the form of the William H. Adams Recreation Center in East Columbus, formerly known as Crum Park, and it stands as a safe haven for the kids of this forgotten community. So we began our partnership and research by talking with the director of the Adams Center, and he shared that the biggest challenge working with the kids of the center is the trauma. At least 80% of the kids face some form of trauma in their household. So at this point, we knew we were facing a wicked problem, but we were up for the challenge, and we began our work towards designing a solution that will provide a support system for at-risk youth while giving them the supplemental education that isn't being addressed in the school system, but could be provided through the rec center, as many families are so dependent on the Adams Center. This is where they're fed, where they're comforted, and where they can escape their reality at home. There are instances where kids will stay until 9 o'clock when the doors close. They choose to walk home in the dark, in the cold, just to stay at the rec center as long as possible. So we and others ask, why shouldn't poor kids have the same opportunities? So we went into the rec center and we spoke to these kids. We conducted individual co-creation interviews with kids who frequent the Adams Center. We asked them questions that we hoped would get them thinking in ways that we could get an understanding of their home life, their school life, and their life at the rec center. They responded with images and talked through their thoughts. Doing these one-on-one sessions allowed us to build a relationship of trust. 14-year-old Soraya shared, "It's nice to feel secure. If nobody is ahead of you, you don't know what you're doing, and that doesn't feel right." 18-year-old Elijah, who is one of the older kids who frequents the Adams Center, sees and understands the effects of poverty firsthand. He shared, "I want to help this rec as I get older, because these kids, they don't have a lot. I want to help these kids because sometimes they cry." 9-year-old Elizabeth understands the power of a strong mind. She shared, "Believing can make you happy, because if things aren't going well, and if I tell myself everything is possible, then that will make me happy." So as we continued our discussions with the Adams Center leadership, we identified 3 trends that are no surprise. The lack of resources always topped the list. If you speak to any educator, they will share that resources are an issue. But with this particular group, it goes beyond lack of resources. These kids don't have present adults to be role models, or adults who are these adults to be role models, or adults who are present. They don't see the value in taking an active role in their child's education. We also have to consider communication and education is a barrier. Funding also tends to be displaced. The rec center has no issue with acquiring sponsorship for a hockey rink, but the needle isn't moving in academic programming. This community is also lacking empathetic, invested leaders and decision makers to truly lead the charge. Lastly, traumatic experiences, stress, and intellectual insecurity keeps the kids from even wanting to be engaged in learning. So knowing all of this, we realize there is a dangerous gap in the lives of these children that stands between school and home. In this gap, kids can fall victim to crime, develop a life of violence, and continue along a path that many before them have already walked. The Adams Center is already making an impact in the lives of these children, but there is a need to directly address and change the trending life outcomes that are a result of this systemic poverty.
The insight from our research in identifying the gap is that school alone isn't enough. Teachers are already spread thin in a career that has truly become a form of social work. We also found that high-quality after-school programs generate positive outcomes for youth, which include increased academic performance, classroom behavior, and health and nutrition. We interviewed Lisa Perry, who works with homeless teens. She expressed how important it is that kids with trauma have a support system. Meet Jasmine, a 14-year-old ninth grader who dreams of becoming a doctor. She comes from a loving home where her mom works 2 jobs just to make ends meet. She is an eager learner and a social butterfly, but admits that she struggles with her anger sometimes. She frequently attends the Adams Center to hang out with her friends and to work on her homework. Meet Jordan. He is 11 and in the 5th grade. He aspires to become a rap artist just like his uncle and enjoys going to the music studio when he is able. Jordan visits the Adams Center along with his siblings most days during the week. He struggles with his reading and writing, but he understands the importance of seeking help. This quote by Sir Ken Robinson explains the current state of our school systems. We have sold ourselves into a fast food model of education, and it's impoverishing our spirit and our energies as much as fast food is depleting our physical bodies. Traditional education isn't structured to address the trauma of at-risk youth because it was modeled from the standards set by society. When kids do not live up to those expectations, they are left behind. From our interview sessions and primary research, we formulated a supplemental interest-based learning model that takes comprehensive approach meeting the needs of at-risk youth facing isolated social challenges called SMILE. Similar to STEM and STEAM, but we found that the two existing models tend to be more linear. SMILE, which stands for Science, Math, Identity, Life Skills, and Emotional Intelligence, allows for cognitive diversity and cultivates a learner-centered environment and curriculum that integrates traditional academic subjects with human development. We believe this system will address a profound need with the goal of bringing upward mobility to this forgotten community. Science and math are still crucial to the development of at-risk youth. Connecting their hobbies and passions with these traditional academic subjects will help them to better understand why they're learning what they're learning and how they will use that in their everyday lives. We knew that trauma was the problem, and we knew that we needed to develop a system to address that trauma head on. The Identity, Life Skills, and Emotional Intelligence programs are unique in that they provide a way for at-risk youth to overcome their surroundings and grow from the negative experiences they have been faced with. The Identity program provides tools and guidance to self-discovery and respect to help form an understanding of who they are in this complex socio-economic ecosystem in which we live. Here is where we will host creative writing workshops that will encourage self-reflection and acceptance of individuality while honing their writing and public speaking skills. Showing Jordan and others like him that leaders and mentors have taken a genuine interest in helping him achieve his goals and dreams will build his confidence as a reader and a writer, helping him to become a rap artist. The Life Skills program introduces functional skills for well-being to encourage a child's development into an active and productive member of their community. Programming within this tier would consist of classes ranging from traditional home ec to helping them to choose their career fields by interviewing local professionals. The Emotional Intelligence program provides an environment to increase emotional awareness and self-regulation while motivating them to communicate and empathize with one another. This tier will consist of daily check-in sessions where the kids are able to communicate their feelings while learning to appreciate others. Having an Adams-centered debate team where staff choose topics the kids can constructively express their opposing views in respectful ways could help kids like Jasmine who struggle with their self-expression. The SMILE learning model was designed to run along each 10-week grading period within the Columbus Public School system in order to provide students with a specialized after-school program that will assist them in achieving greater results with their education and productivity. Community partnerships and grant funding are absolutely vital to the execution of this learning model. Each program tier will need to be planned alongside the rec staff, the kids, and the community in which they live in order to achieve maximum success. This is a foundation that is necessary for this particular group. And once they have this foundation, they have the skills and the capabilities to do it for themselves. We hope that SMILE could later be introduced into other rec centers and after-school programs around the city. So, we will end with this quote by Sir Ken Robinson, that human communities depend upon a diversity of talent, not a singular conception of ability. We thank you for your time, and now you'll hear from Elle and Kendra.
Hi, I'm Elle Miller. And I'm Kendra Ravenel. So today we'd like to share with you a little of our experience over the past year in a Columbus Elementary School's behavioral learning classroom and how we applied design in this new environment. We want to share with you our deepest insight from using human-centered design and action research as we embedded ourselves into the classroom. So, before we get started, as you can see in our presentation, you won't be seeing any slides. Instead, we invite you into our special moment from our research. It might not seem like a big deal to see two 12-year-old boys doing a co-creation activity, but as you'll soon learn, with this population, it's a huge deal. But more on that in a minute. So the school district originally engaged us with a challenge to redesign the behavioral learning classroom. At the time, they were really only interested in interior design solutions. But when we shared a little bit about the system-wide approach that we take here at the MDES program, they were intrigued and wanted to explore what else we could offer beyond furniture and paint colors.
So the Behavioral Learning Classroom, or BLC for short, is a place where intellectually capable and even gifted elementary students can learn to reintegrate back into the traditional classroom. They struggle with their behavioral skills, resulting from anything from autism to ADD, ADHD, or even Tourette's and trauma. So their needs and their struggles are really diverse, but the one thing they have in common is their struggle with behavior skills. Behavior like one day last fall, when we were conducting observations, a student lost control out of frustration. He picked up a chair and threw it across the room. We were scared and nervous for us and for the teachers and for the student, but in that moment we realized that our observation notes didn't really matter. This was real life, a singular moment for us as researchers, but a daily routine for the teachers in the BLC.
So when we started this project, we could have sat behind a two-way mirror for months, just scribbling feverishly. And side note, yes, the classroom has a two-way mirror. That was an option for us. As I mentioned before, we could have started this project looking at an interiors approach, which uses an expert mindset, where the students and teachers passively wait for us to present them with an idea. But we stepped out from behind that two-way mirror and embedded ourselves right in the middle of the classroom. Instead of watching, detached why a student like that had an escalation, we sat shoulder to shoulder with the teachers and the students so we can see and feel what the teachers felt. We were able to experience and see what they did, feel the tension in the room, and we recognize the value they brought to this design process. They're experts too, not just in behavioral learning, but in their own experiences of what it's like to be in the BLC every day, more than we ever could. So instead, we formed a partnership of experts trusting experts. We approached this project from designing for the users to with the users. Now, this isn't a new practice for designers, but it usually isn't done with a community like this. These students struggle to communicate. Despite the hurdles we knew we would face, it was important for us to find a tool to design with them. By connecting, trusting, and respecting our participants, both our teachers and our students, we tapped into their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and ultimately their motivations. And the view from inside the system looks very different than from the outside.
From the outside on that day last fall, it could have just looked like a boy throwing a chair, and we could have just designed a softer chair. From the inside, we understood that it had nothing to do with that chair, and so we kept digging, we kept researching. A few weeks later, we found ourselves sitting outside a gym class. A student was refusing to participate in gym and had stormed out of the room. The teacher was trying to talk him down and trying to communicate, but it was obvious the situation was escalating and he was threatening to run away from school. So as the teacher sat there, she had no visible emotional response on her face. We couldn't figure out how she wasn't stressed out. We certainly were. Her shoulders were tense and tight. This wasn't what he was supposed to be doing. So we started charting how we were perceiving the teacher's emotional responses and comparing that to how they were actually experiencing and what they were feeling in those same exact moments. We anticipated finding that they were feeling more stress than they were letting on, but we were shocked when we also learned they were sometimes doing little happy dances and weren't letting it on. That day outside the gym class, the teacher was doing a little happy dance. Traditionally, this student refuses to even go to gym class, so the fact that he tried was a huge win. On top of that, when he wasn't feeling it anymore, instead of flipping the table and storming out, he was using functional communication. So from the outside, it could have just looked like a teacher who was emotionally detached. But from the inside, we understood it had nothing to do with the expression on her face, and we kept digging.
So we were in class one day, talking to a teacher, when this little boy ran up to us. He had to show us the funniest video of a talking parrot. So he drags his iPad over and sat next to us. And we just sat there and laughed with our whole bodies. Now from the outside, it could have just looked like a student not wanting to do his homework and surfing YouTube. But from the inside, we knew it was so much more. We could have designed a new digital interface, but we understood it had nothing to do with technology. This was his way of connecting to us. So we kept going.
Several weeks later, we met the teachers before school with a scale model of the classroom, with the idea that they could use this in a very tangible yet detached way to explore their hopes and dreams for what their ideal classroom could look like. The students really struggle with change, and so this was a good co-creation activity. Since we were meeting the teachers early and they were such a great group to work with, we stopped at Whole Foods and got some fancy snacks and sparkling water, thinking they would appreciate the treat. But as we were wrapping up and the bell was ringing, the teachers packed up the snacks and put them away in the closets, still unopened. One of the teachers said, "The students will be so glad you brought these." What 12-year-old boy wants sparkling water? They were so focused on student needs that it didn't even occur to them to go ahead and just enjoy the special treat. From the outside, it could have just looked like they had hungry kids. We could have proposed a meal plan. But from the inside, we understood it had nothing to do with food, and we kept digging.
So we brought the model back, and as you can see right over here, it was time for the students to explore changes to the room. They took turns adding everything from playground slides to plastic cats to show us what their ideal classroom they wanted it to be. Now, just a note, this is only a 10-minute clip from an hour-and-a-half session. From the outside, it could have just looked like they were playing together, but we knew this was more than a toy. It was a way for these students to share their hopes and dreams with us. So we listened. We listened to the teachers talk about new spaces for the kids to play and learn. We listened to the students express their wants and wishes for their space. But despite all of these amazing ideas, we were seeing these teachers were still missing their lunches every day. And everything from the sparkling water to any free second they had, they spent it on the children and not on themselves.
So we left all those other ideas by the wayside because they were addressing symptoms and not root causes of the problem. Instead, we proposed concepts to bring teacher mindfulness into the classroom. Our goal is to facilitate opportunities for the teachers to have a quiet moment and a moment of self-reflection so that they can ultimately better care for the students and provide for their needs. So right now, this is just one classroom and one school, but if our concept is successful and we're able to bring that moment of quiet to the teacher who's having a chair thrown at them, this concept can eventually spread to the classrooms down the hall in more traditional settings. And from there, this design mindset could spread to other districts and other schools, bringing more, addressing more teacher pain points, just one at a time. Our job as human-centered designers is to empower people to design their own solutions. Our teachers were experts in their own experiences, just as we were experts in the design experience. We were each active participants in this design process. So we armed them with the tools for them to communicate their stories. From there, we listened to their stories and then interpreted them into design solutions. Solutions that the users are so excited to try out and that the district has already responded so well that they've committed funding to see implemented. And it all started with trust. When we approached this project, we could have done it from any number of ways, but in the end, we chose the right one.
So thank you all so much for coming tonight. So our project was a year-long process, and we obviously couldn't fit all of that into this 10-minute presentation. But right outside the door to your left, you will see posters from all the MDES students that you heard tonight. Please stop by, say hi, and ask questions after you grab food and drinks. Thank you so much.